YMCA Sprott House is Toronto's first transitional housing program for 2SLGBTQ plus youth. In this short presentation, we'll discuss the Sprott House model, hear from a former participant about what worked and how, and their recommendations for others, and we'll share the YMCA's plans to build on our population-specific transitional housing capacity in Toronto. My name is Claire Nobbs. I'm the director of YMCA Sprott House, and my pronouns are she and her.
And my name is Emmanuel Mahmoud. I'm a personal support worker, a former participant of Sprott House. My pronouns are he and him.
Sprott House is a program of the YMCA of Greater Toronto. Funded by the City of Toronto, it's a 25-unit single occupancy house where 2SLGBTQ plus youth aged 16 to 24 can live 1 to 2 years, build life skills, and work with their case manager towards housing independence. Youth have 24/7 staff support, private ensuite bathrooms, 2 shared kitchens, a lounge, a garden, and a backyard. The program was first opened for 2SLGBTQ youth in early 2017, thanks in no small part to the advocacy and extensive research of Dr. Alex Abramovich. The model was influenced by the Housing First for Youth and foyer housing models, and informed by what we know about the social determinants of health for 2SLGBTQ plus youth, elaborated earlier in Alex's presentation. The goal of the program is to build a sense of belonging and community, and to strengthen youth resiliency and connections to meaningful, longer-term supports, aimed at dismantling the barriers that were and continue to be identified in the research. By creating a sense of safety and security, building connections to community, providing case management and meaningful referrals, and by supporting participants with navigating institutions such as medical, mental health, education, and legal, we aim to create pathways out of homelessness and help young people to be successful over the long term. Some other supports at Sprott include social, recreational, and arts-based programs, substance use and sexual health supports, mental health and physical health, employment, and financial literacy programming. As we know, it's critical to continually invite feedback so we know the impact of what we're doing directly from those who experience our services and hear from them how we can do better. With that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to Emmanuel, who lived at Sprott House for a year and moved out this past January. So Emmanuel, can you tell us why a space like YMCA Sprott House is important?
Well, first of all, I think of the foundation that it sets. Staying at a shelter isn't a choice that people with stable lives make. When you stay in a temporary shelter for 2 to 3 months, the hope is that you can then move to a transitional home, which then gives you the opportunity to start rebuilding your life piece by piece. If a shelter is where you draw up your blueprint to be stable, a transitional home is where your foundation starts. And it's better to start the process in a space with people who are going through the same struggle as you, because as we know, the foremost reason for LGBTQ plus youth homelessness is family. Secondly, even though it's transitional, a space like Sprott provides a sense of permanence because it gives some peace of mind away from bouncing from shelter to shelter. Personally, I would have had to move from one shelter to another, frantically thinking about the time passing and where I would go when my 3 months were up, with barely any time to collect myself or build my foundation. But with the 1 to 2 year stay afforded by a program like Sprott, there's the opportunity to take time to build and rebuild, to add to your plan, make it foolproof, pick from like-minded people, ask for advice on things like safety and housing and locations and communities that will accept you. Community is also essential. At Sprott, I had a community that I could trust to have my best interest at heart. To protect me from the dangers of the outside, I developed a community of my own, a network of friends who understood my trials, the ones we reminisced and laughed about. There are many LGBTQ plus youths who, prior to being at Sprott House, had little or no interaction with an accepting community, and their perception of the community was tainted by people around them. So they began to internalize and project those false perceptions onto themselves. Spaces like Sprott act to deprogram that internalization to help us see ourselves as we were meant to be if given the same chances afforded to our peers. That is, a life without negative labels and stereotypes and fear of assault. Security is also key. Spaces like Sprott have the security of the members at heart. They cater to the needs of everyone, eliminating threat of violence. Once, while I was in the emergency shelter, I was told by another participant that I would be accosted in the restroom. No one should be able to threaten your personal safety, especially in a place where you're supposed to be protected.
Absolutely. While you were living at Sprott, Emmanuel, what worked for you and how did these things help?
Well, in my time at Sprout House, there were a lot of things that worked in my favor, including the myriad of programs that were available, the staff and the meticulous assistance in getting where I am today, the house meetings and youth council. Although, as you very well know, in my time at Sprout House, the COVID-19 pandemic happened and we had multiple lockdowns. The staff helped to navigate this difficult time for participants in the areas that they were lacking, especially with mental health. All this and more helped to contribute greatly at Sprout House for me. The programs certainly made a big difference because some were sidetracked due to the pandemic. The ones that did happen were very magnificent. For example, the financial literacy program, not that I was a lavish spender, but I wasn't exactly economical either. Through this program, I was able to compartmentalize better and be more diligent with my savings. I learned about taking advantage of social and financial services such as types of accounts and proper management of my resources. The BIPOC program was also very important to me, where participants of color could come together to understand our differences and appreciate our similarities. It helped to foster stronger bonds within the house. The staff were most helpful, especially in assisting participants with their needs, especially in a time where we had to maintain our distance. Walks around the neighborhood were organized, programs took place outside, in-depth discussions were had about wellness, and still staff did not falter or forget the original goal of preparing us for life after Sprout House. They encouraged me to try new things, including signing up for financial literacy, which fast-tracked, if not changed, my trajectory at Sprout. They also gave solid advice with housing and help with things outside of my control. Sprout provided valuable resources to me at a time when the need for community was strongest but close to impossible because of the pandemic. Um, the Sprout program and the staff helped to alleviate the stress of meetings and going out. iPads were provided to participants to attend Zoom meetings so as to follow safety guidelines. We are also provided with meal kits and other grocery services to limit the time spent outside and the chances of contracting the virus. The program director collaborated with participants to figure out how to navigate that trying time. Trying times indeed.
And what a time it was. I remember it well. Emmanuel, if you could give advice to someone considering setting up a program for youth similar to this one, what would you suggest they prioritize and include based on your experience?
Well, I believe the most important factor in setting up any shelter or transitional home would be the staff. You need to hire staff who will prioritize participants' progress, the kind of staff that I was blessed with at Eva's Place and Sprout House. I am of the idea that without the ideal staff to guide the participants, the journey to independence would be longer and twice as hard. Programming is also key. In order to stimulate the participants and have staff do their work judiciously, they need to provide structure and direction for participants. Programs that will help participants on their journey to independence are very essential. They can be internal and specific to that program, or they could be external programs. If possible, let programs be open to outsiders at the discretion of other participants, of course, or collaboration with a sister program in order to foster better relations outside of a program's community of young people. This may help some more awkward participants to practice and get more comfortable with socializing. You also need to have a fair vetting process. While the goal is to give potential participants better treatment than they received elsewhere, the priority has to always be the safety of the participants in the house. There should always be an interview and possibly a follow-up meeting with their caseworker from their referring shelter before making the decision as to who gets to move in. You should prioritize the need for community, for mental health awareness and assistance, a reconnection program for participants who wish to improve relations with their family members, job drives and employment support, I also think that youth in such a program should be encouraged to save their money. They aren't always motivated to do so, so providing a structured savings program for all participants helps them a great deal for when they eventually move out. And last but not least, I think a mentorship program would be valuable, perhaps from a person who has been through similar circumstances and prevailed. They could be volunteers or they could be invited in to come as motivational speakers. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Emmanuel. Your insights are invaluable, and thank you so much for sharing them so thoughtfully.
Thank you for having me.
So what's next? We've talked about the research, and that explains in detail the importance of creating pathways out of homelessness for 2S LGBTQ plus youth specifically. We've talked about an established program that provides a major stepping stone in that direction. And now it is part of the YMCA's new strategic plan to add to our current complement of housing programs and supports and address the major challenge that our participants face when they're ready to move out of Sprott House. That is, finding an affordable, independent place to live that is free of prejudice and judgment. Sprott participants are eligible for the City of Toronto's chronic homelessness and youth stream housing subsidies, but too often they face discrimination from landlords who reject their applications outright based on stigma and the fear of renting to formerly homeless youth. So with that in mind, I will now speak briefly about our plans to create 31 affordable market rent units on our existing emergency shelter site in downtown Toronto. We've submitted a proposal to CMHC to convert our existing facility from emergency shelter to transitional housing. We will expand and improve existing vacant land with residential infill to construct a modular apartment building. This will create 6 stories built as an addition to the existing building, with 5 studios per floor and a total of 31 studio units, the 31st being a single unit on the main floor for the superintendent or live-in mentor. We will provide low barrier wraparound supports, stable tenancies, and independent living for an underserved population. We will endeavor to empower residents to be successful tenants and transition the Wagner Green, formerly Vanali Street YMCA, to a facility that offers sustainable solutions for 2S LGBTQ youth through supportive housing. As part of this expansion, we have submitted applications for an official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan approval. All 3 processes will be reviewed concurrently and expedited through the City of Toronto's Concept to Keys program. After a thorough and detailed pre-application consultation with city staff, our final applications were submitted and were deemed complete August 12th. Concept to Keys has begun the review process of the combined applications. We've also had great support from the Open Doors program with the City of Toronto to remove all planning and permit fees for this project. The Rapid Housing Initiative application was submitted to CMHC in August, and we anticipate that CMHC will notify the successful candidates by November of this year, with final agreement to be executed next month. We're hoping that building permits will be issued in the spring of next year after council approval is achieved, with occupancy targeted as early as December 2022. I hope we've been able to share with you our Sprott House model, explore what is working and what more is needed, and share a glimpse of how we hope to build on the housing landscape for 2S LGBTQ plus youth here in Toronto. From Emmanuel and myself, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.